In the quiet countryside of England stands the Holmes family estate. The father passed away many years ago, and the older sons left soon after. Now, the only ones still living there are the mother, Eudoria, the youngest daughter, Enola, and a housekeeper. Eudoria named her daughter Enola, which spells alone backward, a nod to her love of wordplay and her desire for Enola to grow into a strong, independent person. Enola has never traveled beyond the woods surrounding their home. She's never visited a city or even a small town, but that hasn't been a problem. Eudoria has provided her with a rich and varied education. Enola has studied science, literature, and self-defense, and she's highly capable. She and her mother are incredibly close, though Eudoria still keeps a few things to herself. Enola has noticed secret meetings her mother has held with other women, though their purpose remains a mystery. On the morning of Enola's 16th birthday, everything changes. She wakes to discover that Eudoria has vanished during the night. In her place is a curious gift, a small box containing a book about the language of flowers, a coded message decoder, and a set of hand-painted cards. With no clear explanation, Enola sets off for the train station to meet her estranged brothers, Mycroft and Sherlock Holmes, hoping they'll help her find their mother. It's been years since they last saw one another, and at first, neither brother recognizes her. But after a brief and awkward reunion, introductions are made. Mycroft wastes no time expressing his disapproval. He criticizes the house's condition and is especially appalled by Enola's lack of formal manners. Sherlock, more reserved, examines Eudoria's room and quickly determines that there's no sign of foul play. Eudoria left of her own will and had no intention of coming back. That evening, Enola overhears her brothers talking while they play billiards. She learns that the house actually belongs to Mycroft, the eldest sibling. Eudoria had only asked to use it for 16 years to raise Enola. Mycroft also resents Sherlock for only showing up now, when a mystery is involved, instead of taking any real interest in their family before. Mycroft believes the solution is to send Enola to a strict boarding school where she can be molded into a proper lady. The next day, he follows through by hiring Miss Harrison, a no-nonsense governess tasked with reshaping Enola's entire personality. Enola instantly dislikes her. Harrison is cold, authoritarian, and determined to erase Enola's free spirit. When Enola dares to push back and meet condescension with sharp wit, Miss Harrison responds by slapping her across the face. Enola pleads with Mycroft to reconsider sending her to the boarding school, but he refuses to budge, firm in his beliefs about what a young woman should be. Desperate, she turns to Sherlock for help instead. But he, ever detached, tells her he cannot intervene. Legally, Mycroft is her guardian. Deeply hurt, Enola accuses him of always turning a blind eye, not just to her struggles, but to how cruel Mycroft has often been to their mother as well. Needing a moment of peace, Enola climbs a tree to do some sketching. She's soon joined by Sherlock, who tries to reach out by sharing a memory from her childhood, how she used to drag around a pine cone wrapped in wool that she'd named Dash, treating it like a pet. Enola listens but doesn't let him off easy. She calls him out again, pointing out how he never visits and doesn't even bother to write. When Sherlock insists that Eudoria's disappearance is a mystery to be solved logically, Enola grows frustrated by his coldness. But Sherlock reminds her that emotion clouds truth. That night, inspired by their conversation, Enola looks at her birthday gift again through a fresh lens. Knowing her mother's love for puzzles and wordplay, she begins rearranging the letters of the coded message and uncovers a clue. Eudoria wants her to examine one of her paintings. Behind the canvas, Enola finds an envelope full of money and another painted card, signaling that her mother has left a trail to be followed. Taking this as a sign, Enola decides to act. She sneaks out of the house in the middle of the night, disguised in Sherlock's old clothes. She heads to the train station and spots the noble Tewkesbury family, seemingly searching for someone. Though they don't board the train, a suspicious-looking man named Lindhorn, clearly one of their employees, does. Enola finds an empty carriage and thinks she's alone until she hears something stir. A young man climbs out a bag, Viscount Tewkesbury himself. He confesses that he paid a porter to smuggle him on board, so he could escape his controlling family. Enola, focused on her own mission, doesn't want to be burdened by his problems and tells him to leave, warning him about Lindhorn. But moments later, Tewkesbury comes back, shaken. He's seen Lindhorn moving from carriage to carriage, looking for him. Enola decides to be the one to leave instead, but she doesn't get far before hearing a struggle. Lindhorn is attacking Tewksbury and trying to throw him off the train. Enola rushes back, hits Lindhorn with his own cane, and pulls Tewksbury to safety. The two flee through the train, dodging passengers and obstacles until they reach a dead end. With no other option, they leap off the train together when it passes a grassy field. Back at the Holmes estate, Sherlock continues searching for answers. As he investigates the empty rooms and scattered clues, he begins to suspect that Enola's sudden disappearance may be more than a whim. It might be a crucial part of the larger mystery. The housekeeper doesn't hesitate to call Sherlock out, just as Enola had. She reminds him that his sister left her some money before disappearing and makes a heartfelt plea: don't abandon Enola again. Meanwhile, Mycroft has already involved the police, determined to locate and control his runaway ward. Elsewhere, Enola and Tewksbury agree to travel to London together. That night, as they camp under the stars, Tewksbury forages for edible plants using the knowledge passed down from his late father. As they share stories about their strange, stifling families and their mutual fear of being forced into lives that don't fit them, they grow closer. Enola even gives Tewksbury a haircut to make him less recognizable. By morning, the two hitch a ride to London, then go their separate ways. Arriving in the bustling city for the first time, Enola is overwhelmed by the crowds, the chaos, and the tension on the streets. Protesters chant on both sides of the heated debate over the Reform Bill, which could give women the right to vote. Posters with Tewksbury's face are plastered everywhere, announcing a reward for his return. Knowing she needs to stay hidden, Enola quickly decides on her first move: buy a disguise. Since Mycroft is likely to have described her to the authorities as an unruly, poorly dressed girl, the perfect camouflage is to dress like a refined lady. Meanwhile, Sherlock decides to pass on the case of Tewksbury's disappearance. His focus is finding their mother and sister. Mycroft protests, but Sherlock ignores him. A clue in a newspaper article about two youths jumping off a train catches his attention and nudges him in the right direction. With her disguise and her rented room secured, Enola turns her attention to the next step of her plan. She begins placing cryptic messages in the newspaper's personal ads and pays a visit to the only address she ever saw Eudorius send letters to: a quiet tea house. Once there, she hears strange sounds coming from upstairs and decides to investigate. That's when she stumbles upon Edith's Jiu-Jitsu Academy for women. Edith, one of Eudoria's old companions, had once taught Enola self-defense as a child, though Enola doesn't initially recognize her. She does, however, remember seeing Edith at her mother's secret meetings. Enola demands answers about Eudoria's whereabouts, but Edith refuses to divulge anything about her mother's political work. Frustrated, Enola tries to force the truth out of her, but fails to land the special corkscrew throw Edith once taught her. Edith swiftly disarms her and sends her on her way. As Enola prepares to leave, she notices a box of dynamite bearing the same logo she once saw on a box at home during one of her mother's secret gatherings. A memory resurfaces strange phrases she overheard during those meetings. Rearranging the words in her head like a puzzle, she extracts an address and wastes no time heading there. The door she finds has a purple ribbon tied around the lock, the same ribbon worn by the women from Eudoria's gatherings. Enola sneaks in through a window and discovers a makeshift lab filled with pamphlets, chemistry equipment, and boxes of explosives. It hits her all at once. Her mother is the leader of a radical suffragette movement. On her way out of the secret lab, Enola is suddenly ambushed by Lindhorn. He forces her head into a bucket of water, demanding to know Tewksbury's location. When she insists she doesn't know, he refuses to believe her. Thinking quickly, Enola pretends to lose consciousness. Then, the moment he's distracted, she fights back. A fierce struggle ensues, and though she tries to execute the corkscrew throw Edith taught her, she fails again. Lindhorn throws her into the lab and lunges with a knife. Fortunately, Enola's corset absorbs the impact and saves her life. Acting fast, she grabs chemicals from the table, igniting a small explosion that allows her to escape. Now that she knows Lindhorn is in London, Enola feels she has a duty to warn Tewksbury. Disguising herself as a mourning widow, she travels to the Tewksbury estate, claiming to be Sherlock's assistant. Tewksbury's mother seems almost convinced, until Inspector Lestrade, who's visiting as a friend of Sherlock's, recognizes Enola and calls out her lie. Tensions rise as Lestrade and Enola argue, prompting Tewksbury's mother to eject them both. Outside, Enola approaches the family gardener, asking for information about Tewksbury's favorite hiding places. She pays him to swap clothes with her, effectively disappearing again. Meanwhile, Sherlock is making progress of his own. After finding some of Eudoria's hidden letters in the chimney, he visits Edith's academy. Edith assures him Enola is doing fine, but refuses to offer further details, emphasizing that Sherlock doesn't grasp the significance of their movement. When Sherlock remarks that he finds politics dull, Edith doesn't hold back. She accuses him of being another man content with a world that works in his favor, uninterested in helping to change it. At the same time, Mycroft is busy with his own plans. After Lestrade confirms the girl he saw at the estate was indeed Enola, Mycroft offers a handsome reward for her capture. Back in the countryside, Enola follows a clue that leads her to Tewksbury's treehouse deep in the woods. There she finds planted clues meant to throw his family off the scent. However, in a book left behind, she discovers a more telling clue pointing to his actual location. Just as she begins piecing things together, she's interrupted by the Dowager, Tewksbury's grandmother. The older woman calmly walks Enola out of the forest while speaking cryptically about the importance of preserving England's traditions and how people like Enola and her son and grandson are new thinkers who threaten those ideals. Next, Enola heads to Covent Garden, where she finds Tewksbury disguised and selling flowers. She quickly pulls him aside to warn him about Lindhorn and urges him to leave with her. Neither of them knows that Enola's own face is now plastered on wanted posters around the city. When they reach the hotel, Enola shares her latest discovery. She believes Tewksbury's father didn't die by accident, but was murdered, and that the attempt on Tewksbury's life is about more than politics. Someone, somewhere, has a lot to gain from removing the heir. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted when Lestrade bursts into the hotel, having tracked Enola down after the seamstress who sold her the dress reported her for the reward. Acting quickly, Enola grabs a teapot and hurls it at Lestrade before dragging Tewksbury to her room. Together, they push a chest against the door to hold it shut, but it's clear it won't hold for long. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Enola makes the decision to sacrifice herself. She urges Tewksbury to flee through the window, arguing that his death would be a far greater loss than her being forced into a boarding school. Tewksbury escapes safely, while Enola is apprehended and returned to Mycroft. He wastes no time in scolding her, confiscating her remaining money and berating her until she's left in tears. She's then enrolled in the boarding school he had planned for her all along. It doesn't take long for Enola to realize she doesn't belong. She despises the lessons that revolve around grooming young girls to become refined ladies and secure husbands. Each night, her room is locked by Miss Harrison, who seems to take pleasure in reminding her that her mother abandoned her and only ever cared about her cause. One afternoon, Enola receives an unexpected visitor, Sherlock. He tells her he's managed to locate Edith and the lab, but still hasn't found Eudoria. Enola lashes out at him, exhausted by being treated like a mystery to solve, prompting Sherlock to open up and admit that he does, in fact, care about her. The unusually emotional confession earns him a teasing remark from Enola. Sherlock also acknowledges that he's aware of her involvement in the Tewksbury situation, though that's not the real reason for his visit. He's brought her something personal, Dash, the pinecone dog from her childhood, which Eudoria had apparently kept under her pillow. For Enola, this is the proof she needed that her mother hadn't forgotten her. Before leaving, Sherlock gives her the latest newspaper, which features an article about the upcoming vote among the lords. As she begins to make a connection, her train of thought is cut off by a delivery from Mycroft, a massive, heavy basket. Inside it is Tewksbury, who has come to rescue her. Enola hides inside the basket while Tewksbury wheels it out of her room. They're nearly in the clear until they run into Miss Harrison. Thinking fast, Tewksbury repeats a lie, saying the basket is a private gift from Mycroft that Harrison must not open until later. Believing him, she takes it to her office. Later, when Harrison finally opens the basket, she finds only a silly cartoon Enola left behind. Enola had already escaped through the window and reunited with Tewksbury outside. The two of them make a getaway in Miss Harrison's own car. Although they're meant to head back to London, Enola decides instead to take a bold step. She wants to confront Tewksbury's family directly to solve the case once and for all. She's convinced the person behind the assassination attempts is Tewksbury's uncle, who wants the boy's seat in the House of Lords. Just like his father, Tewksbury plans to vote in favor of the reform, a position that threatens certain powerful interests. By the time they arrive at the family's mansion, night has fallen. Oddly, the place seems abandoned, a sign that someone may be expecting them. Their suspicion is confirmed when Lindhorn suddenly appears and begins shooting at them with a rifle, forcing Enola and Tewksbury to take cover behind statues in the garden. As Lindhorn approaches their hiding spot, Enola leaps out and throws herself at him in an attempt to take him down. But he overpowers her and knocks her out cold. Tewksbury tries to fight him off next, but he too is quickly overpowered. Lindhorn grabs him and begins to strangle him, fully intent on finishing the job. Fortunately, Enola regains consciousness just in time. She springs back into action and attacks again. And this time, she finally manages to execute the corkscrew move Edith once taught her. The maneuver sends Lindhorn crashing backward, his head slamming against the banister. With his final breath, he mutters that he was acting for England before dying from the blow. At that moment, the true mastermind behind everything steps out of the shadows, the Dowager. Calm and unrepentant, she reveals that she had her own son killed and now wants her grandson gone as well, all in the name of preserving England's traditions and values. She then raises a gun and fires at Tewksbury, dropping him instantly. Enola rushes to his side and begins to sob, believing he's dead. But after a few tense moments, he opens his eyes. He's unharmed. Tewksbury had cleverly worn a piece of armor from one of the garden statues while Enola was fighting Lindhorn, and it stopped the bullet. Realizing she's been outmaneuvered and now outnumbered, the Dowager surrenders without further resistance. The following day, Sherlock visits Inspector Lestrade to inform him that he's uncovered who was behind the attacks. He explains that he followed a series of clues in the newspapers which led him to conclude the Dowager was responsible. But Lestrade has news of his own. Enola already solved the case. Hearing this, Sherlock can't help but smile with pride. Meanwhile, Tewksbury and his mother offer Enola the chance to stay with them, but she declines. Her mission isn't over. She still wants to find Edoria. She does, however, accept the reward money, and before parting ways with Tewksbury, she promises they'll see each other again someday. Sometime later, Enola picks up a newspaper and spots a coded message, one that's signed Mother. She deciphers it quickly and recognizes it as a trap, but not from her mother. It's Sherlock's doing. She still goes to the meeting place, but remains hidden, watching from a distance as her two brothers wait for her. Mycroft, clearly irritated that Tewksbury's vote helped pass the reform bill, grows impatient. Eventually, he agrees to Sherlock's suggestion and officially makes him Enola's guardian. Then he walks off, leaving Sherlock behind. As Sherlock begins to follow, he glances at a nearby statue and notices Dash sitting on it, the old pine cone Enola had as a child. With that, he realizes she had been there, watching them all along. When Enola returns to the hotel room where she's now staying, she is greeted by an unexpected but long-hoped-for surprise. Edoria is there, waiting for her. The reunion is heartfelt and warm, and they embrace tightly. Edoria explains that her disappearance was not because she didn't care, but because she wanted to create a better world for her daughter. Though she won't be staying, her mission is still ongoing. She tells Enola she's proud of everything she's done. Enola understands and accepts this. She now has her own path, just like her mother and her brothers do. She's no longer just a Holmes. She's a detective and a finder of lost souls.